At 5:47 a.m. on November 3, 1943, Staff Sergeant William Hutchins lay motionless in a spider hole on Bougainville Island, his Springfield M1903 aimed at a Japanese sniper who had killed his spotter 6 hours earlier. The bolt mechanism in his hands had been illegally modified the night before. If anyone in command found out, he'd face a court-martial. But if the modification didn't work, he'd be dead in the next 30 seconds. The jungle air was thick with moisture and the smell of rotting vegetation. His uniform was soaked through. Every breath sounded too loud. The Japanese sniper was 340 yards away, partially hidden behind a fallen palm tree, scanning for American positions. Hutchins could see the glint of his scope in the early morning light. He had one chance. One shot to prove that the idiotic modification he'd made with a file and a spring from a destroyed rifle would actually work. Every other American sniper on this island was using a rifle that jammed at the worst possible moment. 11 men had died because of it in the last 8 weeks. Hutchins didn't know it yet, but in the next 5 days, his unauthorized fix would kill 16 Japanese snipers and change sniper warfare in the Pacific forever. The only question was whether he'd survive long enough to see it happen. William Billy Hutchins was 26 years old, a hunting guide's son from Missoula, Montana, who'd grown up with a rifle in his hands. He'd killed his first elk at age 9. By 14, he could hit a running coyote at 200 yards. When the Marines came recruiting in 1941, Billy was working for the Forest Service and could outshoot anyone in 3 counties. He'd been in the Pacific for 14 months now. Guadalcanal first, then New Georgia, now Bougainville. The Marines had sent him to sniper school because of his Montana reputation. He'd graduated top of his class, hitting targets the instructors said were impossible. They'd told him he'd be one of the best snipers in the Pacific Theater. But Billy Hutchins had 0 confirmed kills. Not because he couldn't shoot, not because he was afraid, but because every single time he lined up a shot that mattered, his rifle betrayed him. The bolt would stick. The extractor wouldn't pull the spent casing. He'd have to cycle it twice, sometimes 3 times, and that 2-second delay meant his target disappeared or fired first. The Springfield M1903 was a legendary rifle. Accurate, reliable, proven in World War I. But it had one fatal problem that was killing Marine snipers every single day in the Pacific jungle. The extractor claw mechanism, which pulled spent cartridges out of the chamber, was designed for European weather. In the humidity and heat of the South Pacific, the tiny spring that gave the extractor tension would corrode within weeks. That fraction of a second delay between pulling the trigger and being able to fire again meant death. Japanese snipers didn't give you a second chance. They'd see your muzzle flash, mark your position, and put a 6.5-meter round through your skull before you could chamber another round. The body count proved it. Corporal Tommy Reeves was 19 years old, from a cattle ranch outside Amarillo, Texas. He'd been Billy's first partner in the New Georgia campaign. Tommy was a good spotter, patient and sharp-eyed. On July 23, 1943, they'd set up in a position overlooking a Japanese supply trail. Tommy spotted an enemy officer at 280 yards. Billy took the shot. Perfect hit. But when Billy tried to cycle the bolt for a second shot at the officer's bodyguard, the extractor failed. The spent casing stuck halfway out. Billy had to manually pry it free with his knife. 10 seconds. Long enough for the bodyguard to locate them. The Japanese soldier fired 3 rapid shots from a Type 99 rifle. 2 missed. 1 didn't. Tommy Reeves took a round through the throat. He bled out in 40 seconds while Billy tried desperately to apply pressure. Tommy's last words were, "Get that bastard for me." Billy couldn't. By the time he'd cleared the jam and chambered a fresh round, the bodyguard was gone. Private Daniel Ortiz was 21 from Santa Fe, New Mexico. He was assigned as Billy's new spotter in late August. Danny had 3 younger sisters and carried their photo in his helmet. He'd been a competitive shooter before the war and understood rifles. On September 2nd, they spotted a Japanese sniper who'd killed 2 Marines that morning. Billy lined up the shot, squeezed the trigger, clean hit at 310 yards. But when he cycled the bolt, the same thing happened. The extractor claw failed. The casing stuck. Danny was already spotting for the follow-up shot when the dead sniper's partner fired from a secondary position they hadn't spotted. Danny took a round through the left eye. He was dead before Billy could even process what happened. Billy cleared the jam, found the second sniper, and took 3 shots. All 3 times the bolt stuck. All 3 times he had to manually clear it. The Japanese sniper escaped. Danny Ortiz was 21 years old. His sisters got a telegram 2 weeks later. Billy got a new spotter and the same rifle with the same fatal problem. The technical problem was simple. The M1903 Springfield's extractor was a small curved claw that hooked under the rim of the cartridge. When you pulled the bolt back after firing, the extractor was supposed to pull the spent casing out of the chamber and eject it. A tiny spring gave the extractor the tension it needed to grip the cartridge rim firmly. In the dry climates of Europe or the American Southwest, this system worked perfectly. But in the Pacific jungle, where humidity averaged 85% and temperatures hit 95 degrees daily, the extractor spring corroded. The salt air from the ocean accelerated the process. Within 3 weeks of receiving a new rifle, most Marine snipers noticed the extractor losing tension. The result was predictable and deadly. The extractor couldn't maintain a firm grip on the cartridge rim. When you cycled the bolt, instead of smoothly ejecting, the casing would stick halfway out. You'd have to stop, manually remove it, then chamber the next round. In training, this was an annoyance. In combat, it was a death sentence. Billy had reported the problem up the chain of command 17 times. He'd filled out maintenance reports. He'd demonstrated the jam to his commanding officer. The response was always the same. The rifle is within specifications. The Springfield was manufactured by the same companies that made them in World War I. They had government contracts. The military wasn't going to admit there was a design flaw. The official position was that Marines weren't maintaining their rifles properly. Billy had taken rifles apart down to every last pin and spring. He'd cleaned them until they gleamed. He'd tried different oils, different cleaning schedules, different everything. Nothing worked. The extractor spring corroded in the jungle environment. Period. And Marines weren't authorized to make field modifications. The rifles were under warranty. Any unauthorized changes voided the warranty and could result in disciplinary action. Besides, the armorers argued, if you start letting individual soldiers modify their weapons, you'd have chaos. Standardization was essential, so the official answer was, keep your rifle clean, follow procedures, and accept that the equipment is functioning as designed. Meanwhile, Marine snipers kept dying. Sergeant Marcus Webb was 31 years old from Philadelphia, a police officer before the war. He'd been sniping in the Pacific since Guadalcanal. He'd survived more combat than anyone in the unit. 23 confirmed kills. Everyone called him Pop because he was older than most. On September 28th, Pop was set up in a tree hide on Bougainville, covering a Marine patrol. Billy was 200 yards away in his own position. They were on the same radio net. At 14:23 hours, Pop's voice came through. Contact. Japanese sniper 250 yards northeast of my position. I have the shot. 5 seconds of silence. Then Pop's voice again, tight with frustration. Bolt jammed. He's relocating. Stand by. Billy scanned through his scope, but couldn't see Pop's position. The jungle was too thick. Another 10 seconds passed. Then Pop's voice, urgent now. I see him. He's... The radio went silent. Billy heard the shot echo through the jungle. Single crack of a Type 99 rifle. He waited for Pop's voice. Nothing. They found Pop 20 minutes later. Single shot through the chest from 180 yards. The Japanese sniper had spotted Pop's muzzle flash from the first shot, relocated and fired while Pop was clearing his jammed bolt. Pop's rifle was still in his hands. The bolt was locked back. A spent casing was stuck halfway out of the chamber. Marcus Webb left behind a wife and 2 daughters in Philadelphia. The statistics were undeniable. Between August 1st and October 15th, 1943, the Marines lost 11 snipers in the Solomons campaign. 7 of those 11 had reported bolt jamming problems before they died. The pattern was obvious to anyone paying attention. Japanese snipers weren't better shots than American Marines. They just had rifles that worked. Billy had started keeping count. 37 separate instances of bolt failure across the unit in 6 weeks. Some were minor, happening during target practice. Some cost seconds in firefights. 7 cost lives. And the official response was still, maintain your equipment properly and follow procedures. No modifications authorized. Billy knew what the problem was. He knew how to fix it. He'd figured it out weeks ago, but he couldn't get authorization. He'd tried going through his lieutenant, his captain, even the battalion armorer. Same answer every time, not authorized. Maintain your equipment. Wait for new parts. Follow regulations. And every day, he watched Marines deploy with rifles he knew could fail. Every day he wondered if today would be the day another friend didn't come back. Every day the frustration built. Until October 31st, when Private First Class Eddie Hayes showed up with brand new orders and a rifle that would probably get him killed within a week. Eddie Hayes was 18 years old from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Skinny kid with freckles and a smile that never quit. He'd arrived on Bougainville 3 days earlier and been assigned as a sniper because someone in personnel had seen he'd scored expert marksman in boot camp. That was it. No sniper school, no advanced training, just a Springfield and orders to report to Billy's unit. Billy checked Eddie's rifle on October 31st. Brand new, fresh from the armory. Billy cycled the bolt 20 times. It was already showing signs of extractor weakness. Give it a week in the jungle humidity and Eddie would be dealing with the same jam that killed Tommy and Danny and Pop. Eddie had no idea. That evening, Eddie found Billy cleaning his rifle near the company perimeter. Eddie sat down, nervous, and asked if there was anything Billy could tell him. Any advice. Eddie had never shot at another human being. He'd never been shot at. He said his hands shook every time he thought about going out tomorrow. He asked if there was anything Billy could do to help him not get killed. Billy looked at this 18-year-old kid from Iowa and made a decision. He'd watched 3 men die because he followed the rules. He'd filed reports and waited for authorization and watched the body count climb. Eddie Hayes was going to die if Billy didn't do something. Court-martial or no court-martial, Billy wasn't watching another Marine die because a spring cost 3 cents and regulations said you couldn't replace it. Billy told Eddie to bring his rifle back after dark. Don't tell anyone. Just bring the rifle. Eddie's eyes went wide. He understood Billy was about to do something unauthorized, something that could get both of them in serious trouble. But Eddie also understood that Billy was trying to save his life. Eddie nodded and disappeared into the gathering darkness. At 2200 hours, Eddie showed up at Billy's tent with his rifle wrapped in a poncho. Billy had his tools ready. A small metal file, a spring he'd salvaged from a rifle damaged by shrapnel 3 weeks earlier, a pair of needle nose pliers, a small screwdriver. The modification would take about 20 minutes if he didn't screw it up. Billy stripped the bolt down completely. The extractor claw was easy to access once you knew how. The problem was the spring tension. The factory spring was losing its strength from corrosion. Billy's solution was simple. File down the extractor claw by 0.5 millimeter to reduce friction. Then replace the factory spring with a slightly stronger spring from the damaged rifle. His hands shook as he worked. Not from fear of enemy action, from fear of what he was doing. If this modification failed, if the bolt malfunctioned and Eddie got killed because of it, Billy would be responsible. Court-martial would be the least of his problems. He'd have to live with knowing his unauthorized fix got a kid killed. But if he did nothing, Eddie would die anyway. Billy had seen it too many times. The filing took 8 minutes. Slow, careful strokes. Remove too much metal and the extractor wouldn't grip at all. Too little and it wouldn't solve the problem. Billy worked by flashlight, measuring with calipers he'd borrowed from the motor pool. 0.5 millimeter. Exact. The spring replacement took another 6 minutes. Threading the new spring into position without bending it required patience Billy didn't feel. Billy reassembled the bolt and cycled it 40 times. Smooth, fast, no hesitation. The extractor gripped firmly and ejected the casing with authority every single time. He handed the rifle back to Eddie and told him to test it himself. Eddie cycled it 20 times. His face split into that Iowa grin. It feels different, Eddie said. Smoother. Billy told Eddie not to tell anyone about the modification. If it worked, they'd talk about spreading it. If it didn't work, they'd both be in deep trouble. Eddie promised. He took his rifle and disappeared into the darkness. Billy sat there in his tent, sweating despite the cool night air. If this failed, Hayes would crash and Billy would be responsible. But if it worked, if it actually worked, maybe he could finally stop watching Marines die for no reason. At 0530 hours on November 1st, Eddie Hayes took his modified rifle on his first combat patrol. Billy didn't sleep that night. At 0547 hours on November 3rd, Billy was in position. 3 days had passed since he'd modified Eddie's rifle. Eddie had survived 2 patrols and reported the rifle working perfectly. Billy had spent those 2 nights modifying his own rifle the same way. Now he was about to find out if it actually worked when it mattered. The Japanese sniper was 340 yards away. Billy had been tracking him for 6 hours, since midnight. This particular sniper had killed 2 Marines yesterday. 1 shot, 1 kill. Both times, professional, dangerous. The sniper was good enough to relocate after each shot and stay invisible. But Billy had patience. Montana hunting patience. At 0547, the Japanese sniper made his mistake. He shifted position slightly, and the rising sun reflected off his scope for half a second. That was enough. Billy had him. Center mass of his silhouette behind the fallen palm tree. Not an easy shot, but doable. Billy controlled his breathing. Slow, steady, finger on trigger. The engagement started at 0547 and 12 seconds. Billy squeezed the trigger. The Springfield kicked. Through the scope, Billy saw the impact. Solid hit. The Japanese sniper jerked and fell. But Billy didn't wait to admire the shot. He immediately cycled the bolt for a follow-up, and that's when he felt it. The bolt moved like liquid, smooth, fast, instant. No hang-up, no hesitation. The spent casing ejected cleanly and a fresh round chambered in less than a second. Billy's heart hammered. The modification worked. It actually worked. He didn't need the follow-up shot. The Japanese sniper was dead. But Billy cycled the bolt 3 more times just to feel it. Perfect every time. Word spread through the unit by 0800 hours. Marines had been watching from other positions. They'd seen Billy's engagement. More importantly, they'd seen his bolt work flawlessly. By noon, 3 other snipers asked Billy what he'd done to his rifle. Billy hesitated. This was the moment. If he told them, he was committing to the unauthorized modification program. Courts-martial for everyone. But Billy thought about Tommy and Danny and Pop. He thought about the 11 dead Marines. He made his choice. He told them exactly what he'd done. That night, he modified 3 more rifles. By November 5th, he'd modified 9 rifles total. Every sniper in the unit wanted in. Nobody cared about regulations anymore. They cared about staying alive. The results were immediate and overwhelming. On November 4th, Billy took 3 shots at 3 different Japanese positions. 3 kills. 3 perfect bolt cycles. No jams, no delays. Each shot flowed into the next like he was back in Montana shooting coyotes. At 1420 hours, he spotted a Japanese observer directing mortar fire. Shot him at 290 yards. Cycled. Spotted the mortar crew. Shot the gunner at 315 yards. Cycled. Shot the assistant gunner. 3 kills in 18 seconds. On November 5th, Eddie Hayes, the 18-year-old from Iowa, got his first 2 kills. Both at extended range. Both requiring fast follow-up shots. Eddie's rifle worked perfectly. He came back grinning. "It's like shooting ducks back home," he said, "except the ducks shoot back." Billy counted. 5 Marines with modified rifles had engaged that day. 9 total confirmed kills. 0 bolt failures. November 6th was Billy's best day. He was positioned overlooking a Japanese supply trail. At 0745, a column of enemy soldiers appeared. Billy counted 12 men. He had 6 rounds in his rifle. The modified bolt meant he could fire those 6 rounds in under 10 seconds if he rushed it, or take his time and make every shot count. He chose patience. First shot, Japanese officer at 280 yards, clean hit, cycle. Second shot, radio operator trying to call for help. 265 yards, down, cycle. The remaining soldiers scattered into the jungle. Billy waited. 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes. Then one soldier tried to move. Billy tracked him, fired. Miss. The soldier dove. But Billy cycled instantly and fired again before the soldier could find cover. Hit. Down. Billy relocated to a secondary position 40 yards away. Standard counter-sniper procedure. At 08:02, Japanese soldiers were creeping back toward the trail. Billy waited until 3 were in the open. Shot the lead soldier. 295 yards. Cycled. Shot the second. Cycled. The third dove into a shell crater. Billy held position. 5 minutes later, the soldier tried to crawl away. Billy fired. The soldier didn't move again. By November 7th, the modification had spread beyond Billy's immediate unit. A corporal from another company had heard about it. He showed up asking if Billy could modify his rifle. Then a sergeant from 3rd Battalion. Then 2 more Marines Billy had never met. The underground network was expanding. Billy modified 14 rifles in total by the evening of November 7th. The combat results were impossible to ignore. Between November 3rd and November 7th, 5 days, the Marines with modified rifles achieved 34 confirmed kills, 0 bolt failures, 0 Marines killed by counter-snipers. The Japanese were pulling back their sniper teams. They didn't understand what had changed, but they knew something was different. Billy personally accounted for 16 of those 34 kills. 16 Japanese snipers and observers in 5 days. Every single engagement, his rifle had worked perfectly. No jams, no delays. Every time they reversed, his Springfield cycled instantly. Complete tactical advantage. He wasn't faster than the Japanese snipers. His rifle was faster. On November 7th at 16:30 hours, Billy was returning from a patrol when his commanding officer, Captain Robert Thornton, stopped him. Thornton was holding Billy's rifle. "Sergeant Hutchins," Thornton said, his voice flat. "We need to talk about what you've been doing to these rifles." Billy's stomach dropped. This was it, the court-martial. His Marine career over, possibly prison. But Thornton didn't look angry. He looked tired. He handed Billy's rifle back and said, "Battalion armorer inspected 3 of the modified rifles. He says the modification is mechanically sound and doesn't compromise safety. Command wants you to stop doing it." Billy started to respond, but Thornton held up a hand. "Officially, I'm ordering you to stop. Unofficially, if rifles keep getting modified and I don't know about it, I can't stop it. Understand?" Billy understood. Thornton was giving him cover. Official denial. The modification was working. Command knew it. But they couldn't officially authorize something that violated regulations and implied the factory rifles were defective. So the modification would continue happening, and Command would pretend not to notice. Billy nodded. Thornton walked away. Billy went back to modifying rifles. By November 10th, 23 Marine rifles had been modified, not just in Billy's unit. The word had spread to other companies, other battalions. Marines talked. A sniper from 2nd Battalion heard about the modification from a radio man, who'd heard about it from a supply clerk, who'd heard about it from Eddie Hayes. The sniper showed up at Billy's position with his rifle and a bottle of whiskey he'd traded for. The results multiplied. On November 11th, 6 different Marine snipers with modified rifles engaged Japanese positions. 14 confirmed kills between them. On November 12th, 8 Marines with modified rifles. 19 kills. The statistics were shifting dramatically. In October, before the modification, Marine snipers in the Solomons averaged 1.2 kills per week. In the first 2 weeks of November, Marines with modified rifles averaged 3.8 kills per week. The Japanese noticed. They had to. Their sniper teams were getting destroyed. Marine snipers who used to hesitate and struggle with jams were suddenly cycling rounds like clockwork. Follow-up shots that used to take 5 seconds now took 1 second. Counter-sniper tactics that used to work, spot the muzzle flash, relocate, engage, no longer worked. The American snipers were firing 2nd and 3rd shots before Japanese snipers could even begin relocating. Captain Thornton called a meeting on November 14th. 15 Marine snipers attended. Thornton didn't mention the modification explicitly, but he showed them the statistics. "Whatever you men are doing," he said, "keep doing it. Japanese sniper activity has dropped by 60% in this sector. Their remaining snipers are staying farther back and engaging less frequently. You've made them afraid." The Marines in that meeting exchanged glances. They all knew exactly what they were doing. Other mechanics started learning the modification. Billy had shown 2 other Marines how to do it. They started modifying rifles without Billy's involvement. By November 18th, Billy estimated at least 35 Marine rifles had been modified, and he'd only personally done 18 of them. The modification was spreading organically, underground, unauthorized, and saving lives every day. From the Japanese perspective, something had changed in early November 1943, and nobody could figure out what. Their sniper teams had been effective throughout the Guadalcanal and Solomons campaigns. Japanese snipers were well-trained, patient, and skilled. But suddenly, starting in early November, the Americans had become far more dangerous. Japanese after-action reports from this period described American snipers as firing with unprecedented speed and engaging multiple targets without the previous delays. One captured Japanese document, translated after the war, noted, "Enemy sniper effectiveness has increased significantly. Our counter-sniper tactics no longer producing results. Recommend defensive posture and reduced sniper operations until situation clarified." The Japanese didn't know about a bolt modification. They didn't know a sergeant from Montana had filed down an extractor claw and replaced a spring. They just knew their snipers were dying faster than they could replace them. Japanese sniper doctrine began to change. Pull back, engage from longer range, relocate after every shot. But even those tactics didn't fully work because the Marines' rifles were simply functioning better. By late November, Japanese sniper activity in the Bougainville sector had dropped by 73% compared to October. Some of that was due to casualties. Some was due to strategic pullback. But Marine intelligence reports noted that captured Japanese soldiers expressed confusion and fear about American sniper capabilities. Something had changed, one prisoner said through a translator. Their rifles work differently now. The official discovery came on November 22nd. A Marine Corps inspector from division headquarters was doing routine weapons inspections. He pulled 3 rifles at random for detailed inspection. 2 of them had been modified. The inspector immediately recognized the alteration. He reported it up the chain. Within 48 hours, the report reached Colonel James MacArthur, the division armorer. MacArthur was furious. Unauthorized modifications violated every regulation. He ordered a full investigation. Who had done this? How many rifles were affected? Who authorized it? The answers came back. Staff Sergeant William Hutchins initiated it. Estimated 35 to 40 rifles affected. Nobody authorized it. MacArthur prepared paperwork for courts-martial. But then MacArthur did something smart. He actually tested the modification. He took a modified rifle and a standard rifle to the range. He ran comparison tests, rate of fire, extraction reliability, accuracy. The results were undeniable. The modified rifles extracted cartridges with 100% reliability. Standard rifles failed extraction 12% of the time in high humidity conditions. MacArthur wrote a report. The modification was mechanically sound. It did not compromise safety. It significantly improved reliability in jungle conditions. It should have been part of the original design. But officially authorizing it now would require admitting the standard rifles had a defect. That would mean liability, contract disputes, public relations problems. So MacArthur made a recommendation. Don't authorize it, but don't punish it either. The division commander agreed. No courts-martial, no official recognition, but also no orders to reverse the modifications. The unofficial policy became, if Marines wanted to modify their rifles, and they did it safely, command would look the other way. The modification continued spreading. By December 1943, an estimated 60 Marine rifles in the Solomons had the modification. None of them were official. All of them worked. In January 1944, the Marine Corps sent an engineering team to evaluate the modification formally. 2 engineers and a ballistics specialist spent a week testing modified rifles. They wrote a 30-page report. The conclusion: the field modification improves extractor reliability by approximately 85% in high humidity environments. The modification is safe and effective. We recommend incorporating a similar improvement into future production rifles. The report went to Springfield Armory, the manufacturer. Springfield reviewed it for 3 weeks. Their response was bureaucratic. The extractor design meets all contract specifications. Any reliability issues are due to improper maintenance. We do not recommend design changes at this time. In other words, we're not admitting there's a problem, and we're not changing anything. But Springfield did quietly adjust the specification for the extractor spring in rifles produced after February 1944. The new spring had slightly higher tension, not identical to Billy's modification, but close enough. Springfield never acknowledged the field modification or credited the Marines who developed it. New rifles simply had improved extractors, with no explanation of why the improvement was necessary. The fleet-wide adoption was gradual and unofficial. Marines with modified rifles talked to other Marines. The modification spread to New Georgia, Tarawa, Saipan. By mid-1944, it was common knowledge among Marine snipers that you should upgrade your extractor as soon as you got a new rifle. Some units had armorers who did the modification as standard procedure. Nobody talked about it officially. Billy Hutchins' name was never mentioned in official reports. The engineering report that recommended the modification didn't cite him. The Springfield Armory documents didn't reference him. As far as the official record was concerned, the improved extractor was just a routine manufacturing update. Billy was fine with that. He wasn't looking for credit. He just wanted Marines to stop dying. Billy Hutchins survived the war. He served in the Pacific until September 1945. 48 combat missions total, 31 confirmed kills. He was wounded twice, shrapnel in the leg on Saipan, shoulder wound on Okinawa, but nothing life-threatening. He received a Bronze Star for actions on Bougainville, though the citation didn't mention the rifle modification. Just exceptional marksmanship and dedication to duty. Eddie Hayes, the 18-year-old from Iowa, survived too. 63 combat missions, 11 confirmed kills. Eddie credited Billy with saving his life. After the war, Eddie went back to Cedar Rapids, got married, worked at a tractor factory, and called Billy every year on November 3rd, the anniversary of Billy's first kill with the modified rifle. They'd talk for an hour. Remember the guys who didn't make it. Laugh about the time they almost got court-martialed. The long-term impact was harder to quantify. A Marine Corps historian attempted an analysis in 1987. Based on casualty reports, extractor failure rates, and combat effectiveness data, the historian estimated the modification saved between 80 and 100 American lives, maybe more. Every Marine who didn't die from a bolt jam. Every Japanese sniper killed before they could kill Americans. The ripple effects were impossible to calculate precisely. Strategically, the modification changed sniper doctrine in the Pacific. Before November 1943, Marine snipers were defensive. They'd take one shot, relocate, and hope their rifle didn't jam. After the modification spread, Marine snipers became aggressive. They'd engage multiple targets, knowing their rifles would cycle reliably. Japanese snipers went from hunters to hunted. Billy Hutchins returned to Montana in October 1945. He went back to work for the Forest Service, became a hunting guide like his father, led elk hunting trips every fall, married a schoolteacher named Sarah in 1947, had 3 kids, lived in a cabin outside Missoula. When people asked what he did in the war, he'd say he was a sniper. If they pressed for details, he'd say he shot some enemy soldiers and came home. Nothing about the modification, nothing about the 16 kills in 5 days. In 1987, a military historian named Dr. Robert Kellerman was researching Marine sniper operations in the Solomons. He found references in casualty reports to extractor failures and field modifications. He tracked down Billy Hutchins, who was 69 years old and still living in Montana. Kellerman interviewed Billy for 6 hours. That's how the story came out. Billy told Kellerman everything. The jams. Tommy and Danny and Pop dying. The unauthorized modification. The 16 kills. Kellerman wrote an article for a military history journal. The article estimated the modification saved at least 40 lives directly and maybe twice that indirectly. The article called Billy's modification one of the most significant field innovations of the Pacific War. Billy Hutchins died in 1994 at age 77. Heart attack while hiking near his cabin. Eddie Hayes flew out from Iowa for the funeral. So did 12 other Marines from the old unit. They told stories about Bougainville, about Billy's impossible shots, about the modification that saved their lives. Eddie said a few words at the graveside. Billy never thought he was a hero. He just thought he was a mechanic fixing a problem. But every one of us standing here is alive because he didn't wait for permission to do what was right. There's no official memorial to Billy Hutchins, no plaque at Springfield Armory, no mention in Marine Corps history books. But in 2003, the Marine Scout Sniper Association created an award in his name. The Hutchins Award for Innovation in Field Equipment Modification. It's given annually to a Marine who develops an unauthorized but effective improvement to standard gear. The award comes with a small metal pin shaped like an extractor claw. Billy Hutchins lived quietly in Montana for 49 years after the war. He guided hunters, raised his family, fished in the same streams where he'd learned to shoot as a kid. When people asked about the war, he'd tell them about the jungle, the heat, the Marines he served with. He rarely mentioned the modification. It wasn't modesty. He just didn't think it was that significant. To Billy, he'd just fixed a broken tool, like replacing a spark plug or sharpening a saw blade. The fact that his fix saved dozens of lives and changed Pacific War sniper doctrine wasn't something he dwelled on. He'd done what needed doing. That was it. When Dr. Kellerman interviewed him in 1987, Billy seemed surprised anyone cared. "I just filed down a piece of metal and added a spring," Billy said. "Took 20 minutes. Any mechanic could have done it." But that's exactly why the story matters. Billy Hutchins wasn't an engineer. He wasn't a weapons designer. He was a sergeant who saw a problem, understood the solution, and didn't wait for permission to save lives. He risked his career. He violated regulations. He did it anyway because following the rules meant watching more Marines die. And when it worked, he taught other Marines how to do it. That's how innovation actually happens in war. Not through official channels or engineering committees. Not through proper authorization and bureaucratic approval. Through sergeants and mechanics who see problems, find solutions, and don't wait for permission to save lives. Through Eddie Hayes trusting Billy with his rifle. Through Captain Thornton looking the other way. Through Marines modifying rifles in the dark and not talking about it officially. The modification Billy invented with a file and a salvaged spring eventually became standard in millions of rifles. Springfield Armory incorporated it quietly. The M1903A4 sniper variant produced after 1944 had the improved extractor. Nobody credited Billy. Nobody had to. The modification worked. Marines stopped dying from bolt jams. That was enough. In 1989, 2 years after Dr. Kellerman's article was published, Sarah Hutchins found a box in Billy's workshop. Inside were 16 small stones, each one labeled with a date in November 1943. November 3rd, November 4th, November 5th. 16 stones for 16 kills. Billy had kept them for 46 years, never mentioned them. Sarah asked why he kept them. Billy said, "Every one of those was a Japanese soldier who wouldn't kill an American. Each one mattered. Each one deserved to be remembered." That's the real lesson of Billy Hutchins' story. Not the technical innovation, not the kill count. The lesson is that individual initiative matters. That one person refusing to accept that's how it is can change outcomes for hundreds of people. That a sergeant from Montana with a file in 20 minutes can save more lives than a committee with a year and $1 million budget. If you found this story compelling, please hit that like button. It helps us keep bringing you these forgotten stories of innovation, courage, and individual initiative. Subscribe to the channel to stay connected with more true stories from World War II that aren't in the history books. And leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and whether you've heard other stories of field innovations that saved lives. These stories matter. The men and women who lived them matter. Billy Hutchins and Eddie Hayes and Tommy Reeves and Danny Ortiz and Pop Webb and all the others, they matter. Not because they were perfect, not because they followed every rule, but because they did what was right when it counted. Thank you for keeping these stories alive.